Would you pray with me? Oh, good and gracious God, we come to this day when we celebrate your illumination of the world, and we long to know the word you have for us today. Speak to us through ancient texts, and speak to us through the living word of Jesus, that we might hear, and hearing believe, and believing follow him. Now may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Like many parents, Elizabeth Fadley wanted to give her child the perfect Christmas gift, the thing that she really wanted. Elizabeth is a violin teacher in Manhattan, New York. She has one child, Ellie, who when she was 5 years old wanted one thing for Christmas, and that was a mermaid baby doll. Now, this is not a mermaid, and it is not a baby doll. This is a mermaid baby doll. So Elizabeth was intent on getting this for Ellie, and she searched high and low, and finally, in the farthest reaches of that place I have preached about before, Etsy, she found someone who made a mermaid baby doll. It cost an astonishing sum of money, and when it arrived, she was a little taken aback. In the picture, it looked like there was sort of like a veil over the baby doll, whose name was Pearl, by the way, the mermaid baby doll named Pearl. But when it arrived, she saw that it just had this kind of really odd, creepy skin. Nonetheless, she wrapped it up, and on Christmas morning, Ellie rushed up, opened the box, and Elizabeth says her response was primarily, "This is hideous. What is wrong with Santa?" Well, Elizabeth was still intent on making sure that Ellie could have what she wanted. And she decided that the problem with Pearl was her green hair. And so she went to CVS and she purchased strong blonde dye. And then Ellie said, "Mom, you need to stop it. That doll is just hideous. It's all messed up." But she still wanted a mermaid baby doll. So Elizabeth went back to researching, and she found that in Secaucus, New Jersey, there is a high-class doll and teddy bear hospital. And she phoned them up, and they agreed to take a look at Pearl for another astonishing sum of money. So Elizabeth wrapped Pearl up and sent her away to Secaucus, New Jersey. And after a number of weeks, she received a call from the police department of Secaucus, New Jersey. And a detective demanded that Elizabeth come immediately to the police department to be interviewed. And when she arrived, the detective told her that the doll hospital had brought Pearl to them that afternoon because when they removed her head in order to begin repairing the doll, they found inside of it 2 ounces of cocaine. The detective wanted to suggest to Elizabeth that this was her cocaine. And she said, "I'm a violin teacher. I don't even know what cocaine looks like. And besides, why would I send a doll stuffed with my cocaine to a very fancy doll hospital?" And the detective saw the point of that, but he wanted to know what was up with this doll, Pearl. And Elizabeth explained how she had wanted to get a mermaid baby doll for her daughter, and that she had found this place on Etsy. And he said, "You paid money for this doll?" Well, weeks later, Elizabeth learned that Pearl was purchased from this Etsy shop that was using mermaid baby dolls as a part of an international drug smuggling ring. They didn't actually expect anyone to buy one of the baby dolls, but they would send them off this way. And the detective told Elizabeth, "I'm sorry to disappoint your daughter, but Pearl cannot come home ever. She's going to be locked away in evidence awaiting an international drug trial. I'm sorry." Elizabeth hung up and told Ellie about the situation and that Pearl is going to have to stay in the doll hospital for longer. It turns out she has more problems than we anticipated. And Ellie said, "Mom, I told you that doll is messed up." That is messed up. That is a refrain that can work not just for Christmas excesses and over-extravagant parental efforts gone awry or drug smuggling in dolls. It's a refrain that we could shout quite often. It's messed up, we think, looking at politicians and politics and the actions of murderous autocrats in Jesus' time and today. That is messed up is a chant that reverberates in our hearts and heads when we read the staggering number of fentanyl deaths, or hear of one more child turning to violence and one more classroom traumatized, or simply sit with just one grieving family. That is messed up may even be the thing we whisper inside our head when we confront our deepest, most held on to shame and sense of failure, our regrets, or our just plain incompetence at times. The world can get caught up in trying too hard to do what we think is right, whether it's what we want to do or what someone else has told us to do, and it messes things up in a range of destructive ways, from creating too many expectations to breeding cynicism to leading to a desperate and despairing sense that there is no hope in the world. It can even lead to the slaughter of innocence. The Magi, those Magi may, from some perspective, seem to have a lot in common with a parent who is trying too hard to meet their child's expectations. They, after all, go to great and ridiculous lengths to present ridiculously extravagant gifts to an infant. But the Magi reveal to us that in a messed up world, going to great lengths to worship Jesus does not mean being clueless or conned. The Magi are shrewd all along their trip in their interactions with King Herod and his kind. And they are wily enough to go home by another way, duping the powers of the day. In fact, from his birth, the Holy Child of Bethlehem seems to inspire people with a wisdom and boldness and courage they did not possess before. Shepherds are willing to leave their flocks and return with good news of great joy. The priest Simeon in the temple and Anna the prophetess will declare almost with their dying breath that God has come to earth and will remain here. And Mary and Joseph are willing to become displaced people in order to protect this holy child. The Magi made their way through a messed up world. Perhaps this year we will notice that the Magi rode away from worshiping Jesus with more gifts than they gave. And so do we. When we come to worship at the manger of the light of the world, we are given a set of divine values we did not possess before. We are given priorities and offered to participate in plans that are bringing about goodness. We are less inclined to participate in the cruelty of this world, or even its callousness or callowness. We are guided by a light that can never be extinguished. And when we worship at the manger of the Holy Child of Bethlehem, we are given the gift of ourselves. We are set free from expectations other than our Creator's. We do not have to do what others think we should do. We don't even have to be who others think we should be. We are freed and forgiven, and it is possible for us to be the loving, beloved human being God intends us to be. And when we have worshiped at the manger of the one who is King of all creation, we go home another way. We may still be riding out in the same messed up world, but now we go where we are needed. We go where we find rest. We go where we find joy, and we share it. We go into the world knowing we are possessors of great good news, for we have seen the love of God in human form here among us. It is a messed up world. Even our best efforts can go awry. But our worship of Jesus Christ, it is always right. And when we worship Jesus, when we offer him whatever we have, we always come away with more than we gave, with more than we hoped for. Now we are the light of the world, and we go home another way with God's love.